Happy 4th of July, parish orphans and retrogrades. It's Timothy Gordon here, bringing you special greetings and an announcement on our nation's birthday, July 4th, 2020. The world is in a state of disrepair, and the nation is in a state of disrepair. All my viewers know that the Roman Catholic Church is as well. What are we celebrating today? There's a political cartoon, I think I'll tweet about it later, that says, it's a young boy asking his grandfather the question, and he responds that we used to be a great nation. Now, we are trying our best to wave the flag, make America great again, make America holy again. I have more props than I normally do. A friend got me this. Make America holy again, and make America tough again. The way to do this, to give meaning to the stars and bars, is to recall the original flag of the country, the Betsy Ross flag. That's my favorite one. That's the one I'm always looking for in a mini flag and big flag. It's the one that represents the true fighting spirit of the country. And I'm bringing you today first an announcement and then a related show on the content of the announcement. So here's what it is. I've released 2 classes since my firing on June 3rd, a month and a day before the 4th of July, our nation's birthday. The 2 classes that will run from September through April are a church history class and an Aristotle class with a spring course, Philosophy of Man. What I'm announcing today, by popular demand, I'm not sure this class will get as filled to the brim. We're almost at capacity with the other 2 in about 10 days, is a Catholic Republic class. And this will only be a 1 semester course, just fall. We will do it on the book. We're going to trace my book. This is an old copy, the first edition. It'll go just the fall, starting in September. The class might even be a little bit shorter because it's a 250-page book. We're going through really the 7 chapters of the book in great detail. Lots of people have asked me for it. I'm not sure it's going to get packed out at 100 or 150. The class, because it's only 1 semester, we're going to charge $250 for it. If you are interested in the Catholic Republic course, comment below. Just say interested. And then once we have the enroll button up on timothyjgordon.com, where you can enroll in any of the other classes, then we'll get it up retroactively, and we'll respond to everybody who comments. So comment if you're interested. Now, here's what the class will cover, and this is what I'm going to be talking about today. In the wake of really the demise of this republic, there are several reasons why things are failing, and yet there's only one first cause in terms of the failure of this republic. And the 7 chapters of the book start out showing the introductory chapter. I call it chapter 0, why Protestantism on the right wing and the Enlightenment thought, secular humanism on the left wing, which are often attributed the founding of America. They're often given this plaudit. Oh, Enlightenment political ideas, these represent the founding of America. Protestant cultural ideals, these represent the founding of America. They come together in something called the natural law, as I talk about in chapter 0 of my book. Both Protestantism and the Enlightenment were a stark, unwavering rejection of the 3 prongs of the natural law. One from kind of what we'd call the right, the religious right, one from the secular left, Protestantism and the Enlightenment. I show how each of the 3 prongs are rejected by the natural law, and we're going to study that. We're going to start out the course there. But and then each of the following 6 chapters show that a creature of the natural law, absolutely necessary, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of these creatures, absolutely necessary for republics, can only be dispensed by the intellectual tradition of the Roman Catholic Church. The first chapter is on natural rights, including the right of rebellion, which we celebrate today. We celebrate the right of good guys vanquish bad guys, even if organized into an extant political regime. You have, we're going to talk about why today. You have the right, if you're a good guy in your country, one of the three regimes has been reduced to one of the three wicked, tyrannical regimes. You have the right to rebellion based on violations of the other three natural rights: life, liberty, property. All this sounds familiar, this chapter 1 stuff, because we were taught that, you know, the American Revolution was a good thing in 1776. Happy 4th of July. You know, we were told it's a Protestant thing. We were told that Jefferson and Madison were reading Protestants like Locke and Algernon Sidney, and we're going to talk about that more than anything today. But also, the second must-have sine qua non for republics is subsidiarity, purely Catholic or local rule. The third is virtue ethics in the people. It's strictly Aristotelian ethics. And neither the Protestants can do it, nor can the secular humanists. They both rejected Aristotle in the modern era. Luther and Calvin was said that they rejected Aristotle before they rejected Thomas Aquinas, which makes sense because Aristotle is the seat of philosophical Aquinas. The Enlightenment was a rejection of Aristotle. In Novum Organum by Francis Bacon, it was a rejection. It was called the new science, the new non-Aristotelian science. The third thing that all republics need, that only the Catholic intellectual tradition can give, is virtue ethics, of course. The fourth is a proper relationship between church and state. We argue about that even after Vatican II. You know, people that are traditional minded have these differing concepts of what the Vatican II document, the Dignitatis Humanum, means and is supposed to mean, because it's a very tricky question. Only the Catholic Church has dispensed, long before Vatican II, the answers to this question. What is the proper relationship born between church and state? America actually had it in 1788 and 1791 when the Constitution and the Bill of Rights were ratified. It no longer has it, but it had. The bad guys, the Freemasons in this country and on the court, had to change it. So that's the proof that it was good at the beginning and bad now. I explain that in the book. The fifth must-have for doing a proper republic is a family economy. We get into these stupid arguments about capitalism, which is the name for a thing by one of its opponents, Karl Marx, versus distributism versus socialism. What we need is a family economy, proper-minded free enterprise. And only the Catholic Church, through the School of Salamanca, Thomas, in the Spanish School of Salamanca, really give us the seat of right-minded free enterprise. So just as a right-minded rights regime was not, what I'm mainly going to talk to you about today, was not John Locke and Algernon Sidney, it was Robert Bellarmine, the subject of today's 4th of July talk. Robert Bellarmine was the true source of those rights. He was a Catholic source that Locke and Sidney were plagiarizing because they were Protestants who couldn't make sense of it. Same thing with Adam Smith, also one of these Scottish Enlightenment thinkers. With economics, he was ripping off a Protestant version of capitalism, which doesn't work. The Protestants have wrong-minded theology ideas, which lead to wrong-minded political and economy ideas. Adam Smith was reading guys like Juan de Mariana, some Bellarmine, Suarez, the School of Salamanca guys. And it's a very similar moment. Plagiarized with a slightly perverted Protestant version of the idea, and that led to a perverted form of capitalism. The sixth thing is a proper view of science and technology, which particularly the leftists, the secular humanists, they idolize because they have not Aristotle. Now, the main character, I'm not exaggerating, the main character, at least intellectually, behind the American Revolution was none other than Robert Cardinal Bellarmine. Robert Bellarmine, one of our favorite, as trads, as traditional-minded Catholics, one of our very favorite heroes of the church in the last 500 years, Robert Cardinal Bellarmine. I'm going to spend today substantiating this. If you know a little bit about American history, which is what the Catholic Republic course will be about. And again, please comment in the sections if you're interested in that. Sections below, and we'll get back to you. If you know a little bit, then you know that Jefferson and Adams were calling themselves neo-Whigs. If you know a little bit more about American and English history, then you'll know that the Whigs were, to the guys like Jefferson in the 1700s, the forerunners in the 1600s. In England, they were the Whigs, guys like John Locke, Algernon Sidney. Jefferson and Adams were calling themselves neo-Whigs in America and reading their writings in the 1700s. Now, here's what a Whig was. John Locke, Algernon Sidney, considered two of the most important intellectual influences by Jefferson for the American Revolution. What they wrote was that the right, this all sounds very like flag-waving stuff, sounds very familiar to an American, sounds very constitutional, sounds like stuff of the Declaration. Self-determination of the people, right? Power in the people. The power in the people exists such that if the government becomes destructive of the end of liberty, then the people can choose a new regime, can abolish it and choose a new regime. Natural rights, life, liberty, property, or life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. Depends whose iteration you're taking, Jefferson's or Locke's. Neither of them's the perfect Catholic version. I'll explain why. And if any of those three natural rights are subverted by the regime, or in our day, it's more the culture, then that regime can be jettisoned. And a fourth natural right kicks in, the right of rebellion, wherein rebellion is holy. And Thomas Aquinas, I've said it many times over the last month since my firing, Thomas distinguishes between sedition and insurrection. One's wholly on the side of the regime, one's wholly on the side of the regime overthrower. Now, let me read to you from a great article. I mean, my book is the kind of in-depth look at this, particularly in chapters 1 and 2. And we're just going to tackle this book chapter by chapter in the Catholic Republic class that will be up on Timothy J. Gordon next week. But a great little starter piece is this article on CatholicCulture.org called St. Robert Bellarmine's Influence on the Writing of the Declaration of Independence and the Virginia Declaration of Rights, which was written by George Mason, one of my favorite founders, even though he's got this bad last name, Mason, right? But very important piece. I'm going to read you the opening. As the 4th of July approaches, or is here today, and the nation prepares to celebrate the individual liberties our forefathers staked out for us 2 centuries ago, names like Adams, Jefferson, Hamilton, Madison, and Washington are rightly praised for their contributions to our freedom. But most Catholics are unaware of how the writings of St. Robert Bellarmine influenced the development of our rights, and that this influence came indirectly, which is what we're going to talk about today, through one of the chief defenders of the so-called divine right of kings, Robert Filmer. Now, the only great opening paragraph, the only change I would make would be that it's not just most Catholics, it's most people of the world today and most Americans. Most Americans are unaware of how the writings of St. Robert Bellarmine influenced the development of our rights. Now, also, I think the article, as much great evidence as it marshals, understates the case. Robert Bellarmine, people say it with me now, Bellarmine equals the American Revolution. I'm not exaggerating, okay? I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you right now. I'm just going to read. I didn't want to take extra time because I wanted to get this video up, so sometimes it's hard to know exactly where to stick quotes when we're sourcing something, where to stick them, respectively, into a video. And sometimes I take the time to stick them in the perfect place. Other times I'm just going to shotgun, spaghetti on the wall approach at the end of this. But a few of them are placed ordinally, and it should help you. This will blow your mind. In most American colleges and high schools, I'm going to continue here, the development of constitutional laws traced along the lines that begin in ancient Greece and Rome, leading to the philosophies of Algernon Sidney, the Whig of choice that was executed in 1683. Whig of choice. Jefferson favored him even over Locke and John Locke. It is okay. So I'm going to skip there now. It's undeniable that Thomas Jefferson, the author of the Declaration, and George Mason, the author of Virginia's Declaration of Rights, former best friend of George Washington, he wouldn't sign the Constitution because he saw problems with it that have been vindicated in our day, and Washington stopped being his friend, George Mason, because he wouldn't sign the Constitution until there were more provisions for subsidiarity in the Constitution. I love Mason. That these two were intimately familiar with the classical and contemporary scholars from Aristotle onward, and it is not unreasonable to conclude that they are familiar with writers who opposed popular sovereignty and defended the absolute right of kings. Now, a word here. My Catholic listeners are mostly traditionalists. This is where I fit in the Catholic scheme of things, mostly. And the Catholics say, no, Tim, you're wrong. The founding of the American Republic was not Catholic. I'm going to prove you wrong mathematically and logically. But they don't want it to be. They say, no, it's the Protestants, man. Because too many American Catholic trads think that America's evil, and they don't want this accolade on their resume, so to speak. Well, it's not on yours. It's a great accolade, and it's not on your resume anyway. The founders founded it. We've been the lesser sons of greater sires that can't keep it, but they did found it with some problems. So my Catholic audience, which is a large part, the larger part of the audience tuning in today, 4th of July 2020. They say, no, it's not Catholic, it's Protestant, for one reason. The Protestant right-wingers, they say, yeah, this is not a Catholic accolade, the founding of America in 1776, and then the founding of the Constitution in 1788, because it's a Protestant idea, but they're proud of it. So the Protestants at least know that it's a hell of a thing to be proud of, the founding of America, and they claim it. The Catholics are like pushing it away from them as blame. They're saying, no, it's a Protestant founding. Here's what happened, and this is what my book, Catholic Republic, offering a course by popular demand, is all about. The founding and the framing, meaning 1776 and 1788, the Declaration and the Constitution, are each crypto-Catholic in their intellectual inception. Crypto-Catholic, hidden Catholic. The early republic, as you know, this is not a lie of history, it's true, was citizened by mostly Protestants, almost all Protestants. True, that's a truth of history. And, what was it? Of the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence, there's only one Catholic. We think there are about 11 secret Freemasons who didn't own it. There's 11, but everyone else was strong, hardcore Protestant, of one denomination or the other. Covenantist in the north and Anglican in the south. So these guys, the Whigs, like Locke and Sidney in the 1600s in England, and the neo-Whigs like Jefferson and Adams in the 1700s in America, who were reading the Whigs, they embraced the ideas of popular sovereignty. Now, many Catholic trads think this is a dirty word, popular sovereignty. It's not. It's not. The divine right of kings, I'm going to blow your mind today on the 4th of July. The divine right of kings was a made-up Protestant doctrine by a royalist, and it doesn't go back to the earliest kings of the emperors, the czars of Greece or Rome. It was made up in the 1600s by this court theologian named Robert Filmer. Hated Robert Filmer. When you read the founders, which I read a lot because I studied the Constitution a lot in law school. When you read the flag-waving founders and framers of this country, Robert Filmer is public enemy number one. Now, these guys were culturally Protestant, so they also kind of had to pay lip service to anti-Catholicism, but their greatest intellectual heroes were Catholics. And here, I'll prove it to you. So this is where the proof comes in. One such book found in, and this is back to the CatholicCulture.org article, one such book found in Jefferson's personal library, now in the Library of Congress, was Patriarcha. And this is like the hated book. The American Revolution, July 4th, was founded against the book Patriarcha by Protestant theologian Robert Filmer, who was the court theologian to King James I. A lot of you who know English history from the previous century to the founding will know about James I. It is a treatise in defense of the divine right of kings, which Jefferson obviously read because the book's margins are full of his notes. The most interesting aspect of Patriarcha by Robert Filmer, the book against the founding of America, the English book, the pro-Tory, the pro-royalist book par excellence, is that the most interesting aspect of Patriarcha from a Catholic perspective is that the first pages of the book, and throughout the entire first half of this thing, the inception of it, discredit and attack the writings of St. Robert Bellarmine, who is one of the most eloquent and prolific defenders of freedom the Catholic Church has ever produced. And by freedom, we mean liberty. So now, I said, here's a class of Catholics that know a little bit about the founding and framing. Here's a class that know a little bit more. The ones that think they know the most nowadays, particularly in trad circles or constitutional circles that are Catholic, are, I'm talking about people that reject liberty. Guys like, Adrian Vermeule, Patrick Deneen at Notre Dame, Christopher Ferrara wrote a book about how liberty's the god that failed, or liberty failed in America. Liberty can't fail. The idea that liberty fails, people, is an utterly and distinctly Protestant notion, right? Luther upheld it. He debated Erasmus. There is no freedom of will. The human will's in bondage to sin. Calvin rejected freedom of will. He said we're predetermined or double predestined to nothing but sin. They hated Aristotle because he expounded the freedom of the will. They hated Thomas Aquinas, whether they read him or not ever, because he proposed the freedom of will, liberty. Political regimes that are good must conduce to liberty, right? They must not be rule through the sword, because this does not leave open the theological possibilities of the citizens, of the subjects, to choose the good and habituate the good, which is what God requires us to do. So political liberty is good. It's not license. It's not freedom for its own sake. Liberty so that we may choose the good. There are three good regimes, kingships, aristocracies, and republics. And the three good regimes are good precisely because they lead us to political liberty and subsidiarity. Even though the top one is the rule by the one, the middle one's the rule by the few. Republics are the proper rule by the many. They lead to liberty. When liberty becomes corrupted into license, or when the rule by any of the three regimes become corrupt into their shade form, respectively a tyranny by one, oligarchy by a few, or a democracy by the many, those are the shade, corrupt, perverted forms, then a revolution is needed. The right of rebellion kicks in the people. They need to kick the old government out and hit restart. That's what July 4th, 1776 was, man. That's what it was. And it's Catholic. And the Protestants, like Buchanan, Rutherford, Pufendorf, Grotius, Sidney, Locke, take your pick of any of the Protestant political scientists, political philosophers of the 1600s and 1700s. They really struggled because they had rejected natural law so widely, and they rejected the Catholic intellectual tradition, sort of, so wholly, that they couldn't figure out how to get around difficult passages in the Bible that sound like they're insinuating you're stuck with a bad king. You can't kick him out. Thomas Aquinas, Aristotle, Cicero, Bellarmine and Suarez, particularly the late Thomists. Even Montesquieu, who was a fallen away Catholic, came back to the church at the end of his life. They all say, on the other hand, you can kick out a bad king. Thomas Aquinas is the first one to say specifically, you can even kill a corrupt king. First political thinker in the history of the world, Thomas Aquinas, to say this. So the Catholic tradition is robustly pro-liberty and pro-right of rebellion and pro-life, liberty, property. The Protestant side is utterly bereft of these things, and sola scriptura even insinuates that you can't get natural rights, no right of rebellion. Liberty is fake, right? The Protestants don't believe in liberty. They believe the will is in bondage to sin. The secular left, they believe that there's no such thing as liberty because we're just glorified meat machines. It's all atheist, right? So freedom, which is a metaphysical property, doesn't exist. It's all Catholic. Everything turns up Catholic. So Robert Bellarmine, who's a Thomist and develops themes that really are there in Thomas, is like the most specific writer, pro-liberty, pro-three regimes talked about by Plato and Aristotle, that you don't just have to have a monarchy. A lot of Catholic trads think that nowadays. They're just wrong. Thomas Aquinas, Suarez, Bellarmine, Aristotle, Plato, they all talk about you can have any three of the good regimes or a combination of the three, which is a fourth, which is really what we have. A kingship, aristocracy, or a republic. Those are good forms. And you can do any of the three that best fit the people. In Patriarcha now, which is written, it's the main bête noire of the American revolutionaries. They hated it. They're revolting against Parliament and King George, and against Patriarcha, which is like the main rallying cry of Parliament and King George across the pond. It was written not against John Locke or Algernon Sidney, but against the ideas of Bellarmine. Liberty, natural rights, right of rebellion, popular sovereignty. Popular sovereignty is not an Enlightenment ideal, people. Say it with me. Popular sovereignty was not an Enlightenment ideal. It runs hand in hand. I'm going to read you a bunch of quotes now and blow it out of the water. It runs hand in hand with liberty, which is good. That's not bad. And it's there in Thomas Aquinas, and it's there robustly in Bellarmine. That the Enlightenment thinkers did not actually believe in popular sovereignty. They believed in a leftist, secularist, atheist version of this concept called social contract theory, which is nonsense and garbage. America's not based on social contract theory. The French Revolution was. America's based on popular sovereignty. The Christian, the specifically Catholic version of this, popular sovereignty. See, you don't know any of this. That's why you need to take my course in fall, the Catholic Republic course. I'm just reading from this Catholic Culture article, excellent one. I'm going to link to it in the notes, but my course is even more specific and more mind-blowing. In Patriarcha, Filmer starts out quoting Bellarmine. Remember, Patriarcha is Robert Filmer, the kind of the book that is most of all the enemy of July 4th, 1776, the American revolutionaries. And the enemy of that enemy was Robert Bellarmine. Even though he's a Catholic, Jefferson and Adams, no, they each had him in their library, and James Madison as well had Bellarmine. But they knew, okay, we're going to channel his ideas through Locke and Sidney. They were kind of ripping off from him. They were Protestants too. They didn't like that he's a Catholic, but they love his ideas. And they also didn't like that Protestantism didn't really allow them, if you're being theologically consistent, to draw from the ideas of liberty, right of rebellion, natural rights, natural law, virtue ethics. That's all Catholic stuff. The ideas of America, by the way, these are the ideas of the American Revolution. They're all Catholic. So, Filmer quotes Bellarmine directly. He says this. He says, Filmer, who hates these ideas, quoting Bellarmine, who is the baseline of these ideas in the American Revolution. Secular civil authority is instituted by men. It is in people unless they bestow it on a prince, the first of the three types regimes of government. This power is immediately in the multitude as in the subject of it. For this power is in the divine law, but the divine law hath given this power to no particular man. This is Bellarmine, and it's true, being quoted by Filmer, who's made up this doctrine of the divine right of kings. Trads misunderstand this out the wazoo. If the positive law be taken away, Bellarmine says, there is left no reason amongst the multitude one rather than another should bear the rule over the rest. Power is given to the multitude, to one man or to more, in the case of aristocracy or republic, by the same law of nature. For the commonwealth cannot exercise this power. Therefore it is found to bestow it upon some one man or some few. Aristocracies or republics. It depends upon the consent of the governed, the multitude he uses, to ordain over themselves a king or other magistrates. It's not a divine right of that king. It's made up. That's Protestant doctrine. I'll repeat it. It depends upon the consent of the multitude to ordain over themselves a king or other magistrates, or if there be a lawful cause, the multitude may change the kingdom into aristocracy, or it's a republic. Now, in the translation here, he says democracy, which is the perverted form of republic. This is a common problem that can be quite severe, actually. Democracy is one of the three wicked regimes. You know, kings, like I said, kingship or just monarchy can become tyrannies or despotisms. That's the good form, bad form. Aristocracy, rule by the few, rule by merit, can become oligarchy, ruled by just a wealthy corrupt class in the corrupted form. Republics, or they're also called polities in Plato and Aristotle, are good. It's mediated rule by the people. Democracy is unmediated rule by the people. It's a tyranny of the majority. So on the one side, you have the good regime. When it corrupts, it slides into the corrupted form of the regime. So it's the just rule by the one or the few or the many on this side. On this other side, it's the corrupt rule by the one, the few, or the many. See how that works? And the translation of Bellarmine has him getting mixed up between democracies and republics, which is a strikingly common problem. I'm even always telling Patrick Deneen this at Notre Dame. He's a political scientist at Notre Dame, that he's mixing them up. CatholicCulture.org article continues. Imagine what Jefferson must have been thinking as he read the opening paragraphs of Patriarcha, a direct assault on the Roman Catholic scholarship of Bellarmine. Here are the opening pages of Patriarcha. Quote, since the time that school divinity, Catholic universities, began to flourish, there hath been a common opinion maintained as well by the divines as by the divers of learned men, which affirms, mankind is naturally endowed and born with freedom from all subjection, and at liberty to choose what form of government it please, and that the power which any one man hath over others was at the first by human right bestowed according to the discretion of the multitude. This tenet was first hatched in medieval Roman Catholic universities. This is Filmer saying this. Trad Catholics who have the wrong political ideas hate it. Protestants who are proud of America hate it for the opposite reason. Filmer, who was a Protestant royalist who made up the idea of the divine right of kings out of whole cloth. It's nonsense theologically and philosophically. He is the one that's pitching this lie about Bellarmine and the Catholic tradition. Well, it's true in a sense, but he's the one that's saying it's a bad thing, that popular sovereignty, it's Catholic. This tenet was first hatched in medieval Catholic Roman universities. Trads don't know this. And hath been fostered by all succeeding papists for good divinity. They don't know this. Starting in the 1200s, right after Magna Carta, which was a Catholic document, the Catholic Church and Catholic medieval and late medieval universities, even early modern universities, still they all became Marxist, fostered the ideas of popular sovereignty, natural rights, natural law. The right of rebellion is the fourth natural right, which kicks in when their regimes are become corrupted. And the idea that comes from Plato of three good regimes. You don't have to just have a king. You can also be an aristocracy or a republic, or a fourth regime, which is a mixture of them. That's what we have. Check this out. The executive branch is a king following branch. The judiciary is an aristocracy following branch. And our bicameral houses of legislature are the branch which follows the polity or the republic. So we're a mixed regime, and that's good as well for Thomas Aquinas, Bellarmine, Suarez, Montesquieu. See how you don't know all this? That you really need, I mean, there's a lot more to it than this, but America is a crypto-Catholic country. Right-minded Betsy Ross flag America, I wish I had that. That's crypto-Catholic. Now this, I'm sad to say, this represents, in the last 100 years or so, federal tyranny, federal incursions into liberty all too often. And so I prefer to wave the Betsy Ross flag, but those ideas of the Betsy Ross flag, which stood for natural rights, natural law, subsidiarity, virtue ethics in the people. Doesn't matter how good a government you have if the people aren't virtuous, said all of the founders and framers. It's a Catholic idea. Separation of church and state, but not over separation of church and state, which has always been a tricky balance. The family economy, the only moral economy version of enterprise, free enterprise, and then science and technology. They're all Catholic ideas. They're all Aristo-Thomist Bellarminian ideas. Aristo-Thomist-Bellarminian ideas. They can't be done on a Protestant basis. This can't be done on a Protestant basis, or definitely not an Enlightenment basis. Not Enlightenment at all. Social contract theory is garbage, man. It's Rousseau. That's the French Revolution. That's the opposite of where we want to go. Listen to this. So again, Filmer hates the idea that the Catholic idea, lots of Catholics don't know it, from Bellarmine, mankind is naturally endowed and born with freedom from all subjection and at liberty to choose what form of government it please, and that the power which any man hath over others was at the first by human right bestowed according to the discretion of the multitude. This tenet, says Filmer, the opponent of the American Revolution, even though he's a Protestant and they're Protestants, he's a Protestant royalist, they're Protestant Whigs, who are secretly rooting for Bellarmine and the Catholics, who are the only ones who can rightly champion the ideas of natural rights and natural law. All the American ideas. It's a complex thing. The enemy of the neo-Whigs, the enemy of their enemies, were Robert Bellarmine and Thomas Aquinas and Francisco Suarez, the school of Salamanca. See how that works? No one knows it. No one knows it. I mean, my book, Catholic Republic, it needed a wider audience, but most Protestants look at that book and they're like, I'm not reading that. The divines also of the Reformed churches have entertained it, and the common people everywhere tenderly embrace it as being the most plausible to flesh and blood, talking about popular sovereignty. And this is Filmer now. For that it prodigally distributes a portion of liberty to the meanest of the multitude, who magnify liberty as if the height of human felicity or happiness were only to be found in it, never remembering that the desire of liberty was the cause of the fall of Adam. This is the right Protestant attitude towards liberty. It's theologically correct with Luther, Calvin, Zwingli, Melanchthon, Karl Barth later. This is their attitude toward liberty. All right? So trad Catholics don't seem to know it, and modern day patriotic, God bless you, Protestant Americans don't seem to know it. This is the Protestant view toward liberty that trad Catholics are embracing more than modern patriotic Protestants. Pro-liberty is a Bellarminian thing. Popular sovereignty is a Thomistic Bellarminian thing. And you can't find it in the right-minded Protestant tradition. You only find it in the Catholics, in the medieval Catholic university. If you take Robert Filmer at his word, you can almost always take the enemy at his word, unless he's a Marxist enemy. Robert Filmer was saying, he was the court theologian to James I. He was speaking honestly. No one knows this stuff. There's no doubt that Jefferson, the article continues, after reading Filmer, must have been struck by Bellarmine's definition of individual freedom and popular sovereignty. It may come as a surprise to many, but a closer analysis of Bellarmine's writing in Catholic Church history demonstrates that since 1200 AD, think after Magna Carta, Catholic churches defended individual rights and freedoms, which eventually led to the abolition of slavery, serfdom, the rise of popular sovereignty at the expense of absolutist monarchs and tyrannical nobles. To the question of whether the prevailing form of government, monarchy, was divinely protected and absolute, Bellarmine contended that the form of government was actually a combination of monarchy, aristocracy, and democracy, which is exactly what Thomas Aquinas says. So you're not going to be able to cast Bellarmine out as a modernist. It's exactly what Aristotle says. The Catholic tradition says mixed regime is actually the best way to hedge your bets. Monarchy's best when it's good, but too often it goes south. Look at what's happened in the Roman Catholic Church, the only regime which must be a monarchy. You get a bad king, everything gets bespoiled. So you hedge your bets with republics or with, better yet, mixed forms of the three. Though not popular at the time, the article continues, Bellarmine defended these principles, which today we consider the foundations of our democratic process. Again, that's an ugly term. The D word, Democrat, is always bad. Republican process. Bellarmine's voluminous political writings reveal his belief that each of the three forms of government, monarchy, aristocracy, and republics, I'm correcting it here, have their unique advantages and disadvantages, but he insists that whatever combination is adopted by people should be nothing less than the one that is most useful to them. So you're not bound as a good Christian, whether you're Catholic or a Protestant, to monarchy. This idea comes from Robert Filmer. You are brainwashed. Trad Catholics out there that think there's only one good regime, monarchy, you're brainwashed. This is Robert Filmer's fabricated 17th century made up court theology to James I. It's nonsense. Okay, it's a great article. I'll link to it in the show notes. I'm just going to read you a couple really quick Bellarmine quotes. I think one of them appeared in this, but now I'm just going to spaghetti on the wall because I don't want anyone saying that I proof texted Bellarmine. He is all over it. Thomas is all over it. In the Treatise on Law, the section in the Summa, just all over the mixed regimes and natural rights and natural law, which is averse to people who tend to be monarchist-only types, like Filmer. Here's Bellarmine. Human liberty really consists in this, that one is free to choose the good and reject the evil. You got to have freedom to do this. The law is manifestly not repugnant to true liberty, for its purpose is not to impede the choosing of good and the rejection of evil, but to promote the exercise and enjoyment of liberty. The law can rightly be said to be the opponent of servitude and the protector of liberty. So, all those trad Catholics out there that are saying liberty is a god that failed, nope. You're not Catholic if you say that. You're not Catholic when you say that. A good political regime, ruled by one, ruled by few, ruled by many, or a combo of them, which is a fourth type, they all, their locus in quo, their telos, is liberty. You want people to have the liberty so they can choose the good. He also says a bad law. Now this sounds like 4th of July stuff, right? So look at the flag when you hear this. A bad law is not a valid law. Good laws are not a curtailment of liberty, but a charter of every man's right. When laws do not protect men's rights, but a charter of every man's rights. When laws do not protect men's rights, but infringe on them. When laws are an impediment to the community's development and welfare, they are not good laws, and they are therefore not valid laws. Augustine says this too. Aquinas says it too. Here's popular sovereignty. I know this is trad Catholics a lot of times think this is an Enlightenment ideal. It's nonsense. It's a Bellarminian Thomistic thing. The authority of the king descends, not immediately from God nor by divine right, but only by the law of nations. Ius gentium. This has been, indeed, the common opinion of all writers and the general usage and practice of the past. We see, for instance, how kingdoms have been converted into republics and republics into kingdoms. You can transform your regime. And both rules were regarded as equally just. It's not worse for a kingdom to go to a republic or vice versa. This could not be so if the authority of kings did not depend on the common consent but on divine right. This is the line that Filmer most rejects, and that Protestant royalists made up their false philosophy most to reject, and that trad Catholics who think you only can have a king as a valid regime are most brainwashed about. This is Bellarmine, man. Mixed government recommendation by Bellarmine here. On account of the corruption of human nature, we consider as more useful for men at this time a monarchy tempered with aristocracy and republic. Translation says democracy, rather than a simple monarchy. Thomas Aquinas says this too. Aristotle says this too. It's pretty simple stuff. It's pretty simple stuff. Look, I don't want to go on and on. You got your barbecue to tend to, right? You have your barbecue later today. You're going to your friends, or your friends coming to your place. Here's what I want you to tell them. Those of you who know me know that I say this. I say this on 4th of July. What do you think this stands for? What do you think this flag stands for and this holiday stands for? The right of rebellion was not a one-time thing, friend. The right of rebellion is the mantle that we're going to have to pick up, maybe. It's looking more like it. Right of rebellion is any time the regime becomes tyrannical and becomes destructive to the ends of life, liberty, property. Eudaimonia, happiness. Moral happiness, not just pleasure. We might have to do it. Who knows? I mean, look, we Catholics say every Christmas season, I tweeted about this yesterday. What's the reason for the season of Christmas? It's Christ. If you're not a Christian, don't celebrate Christmas. It's not yours. It's ours. It's our patrimony. Get your filthy hands off. Right? That's what we say. That's what I say to all the cowards and the betas and the cucks out there that say, that they want to go to a 4th of July barbecue. Eat some more burgers. That's not what it's about, man. It's about Bellarmine. It's about Thomas Aquinas. It's about life, liberty, property, and it's about the more than that, the holy path to heaven that most of us choose. Most of us aren't priests. We need life, liberty, property as matrimonial people whose path to heaven is the second vocation of matrimony. That's why we need a good regime to secure those teloses, those sub-teloses of the big telos, getting to heaven, us and our family to heaven. The right of rebellion secures those rights when they become unfastened, as they did in 1775. As they did when the Sons of Liberty were dumping the breakfast beverage into Massachusetts Bay. Well, why do you think they did that, by the way? I mean, because there was a slightly high tariff on their breakfast beverage. That was like the Tea Act, the Townsend Acts, the Sugar Act, and the Stamp Act. These 4 parliamentary acts were nothing compared to the tyranny that we smile and nod and ask for another for. Yes, sir, may I have another? There's nothing. Tea Act, Townsend Acts, Sugar Act, Stamp Act. This made these tough, they were Protestant people, have a rebellion. A Christian rebellion couldn't be justified by the Protestant intellectual tradition because there's nothing there that doesn't reject it. So they're secretly reading the Catholic tradition, intellectual tradition of Robert Bellarmine, Suarez, Juan de Mariana, Thomas Aquinas, and Aristotle. Oh, and Cicero. Jefferson said this. He even admitted that of the 4 most important influences, Aristotle and Cicero make his list. That's his secret crypto way of saying Thomas Aquinas. Okay? And Bellarmine, who he had in his library, marked up. Look, people. It's only a fall class. It's $250. It'll be a little shorter, a little swifter than the other classes, which run 2 semesters. Take my Catholic Republic class. Mark below in the contents if you're interested in the class. Tell your friends at their barbecues this is not about eating more meat. That's not what the day is about. It's not about fireworks. It's about securing the right to rebellion, which is not a backward-looking thing. It's backward-looking, maybe in the present, almost definitely in the future. Take the country back. It is a Christian country. It's crypto-Catholic. It was mostly Protestant people. They kind of ruined their chance here. They gave it to the secularists, but we Catholics have given the church to the secularists. So don't get on your high horse, Catholics, with our Protestant brethren. But it's Catholic intellectual tradition that enabled these tough Protestants, tougher than you, tough Protestants, to risk it all, their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor. And they had a lot to lose too, guys like Jefferson. They risked it all to take on the most powerful empire in the history of the world to that point. Make America holy again? Forget great, because that's not specific enough. Make America holy again, and you do so by making America the right kind of tough again. what I'm always talking about. Christians need to be tough. The original Christians of America, mostly Protestants, were tough. They were tough because they're just tough-fibered colonists who crossed, whose near ancestors had crossed the sea, tempestuous sea, and were willing to risk it all. And they were reading tough Christian philosophy, Bellarmine, Suarez, Thomas Aquinas, Catholic stuff. So you're not allowed to celebrate the 4th the same way atheists ain't allowed to celebrate Christmas. If you're a week, man, if you're a feet, you're only allowed to celebrate it if you celebrate. I wish this were a Betsy Ross flag. They're just hard to find in the small version. If you celebrate the right of rebellion, that's why this flag strikes your eye first is red. Spilt blood. Justly sacrificed. Self-sacrificed blood. Not just against foreign invaders, but against domestic ones. The way Parliament and King George had become tyrannical. Wherever it appears. God bless you guys. God bless America. God bless Crypto Catholic America. Take the Catholic Republic course if you're interested. It's going to be a really, really good time. My third and final course, I ain't offering any others in the fall. We're going to be operating out of my book. We're going to go through it relatively fast in like 3 months. Guided lectures on little short readings. So we're going to go through the whole thing. It's going to be great. Comment below if you're interested. Eat your barbecue. Watch your fireworks. I love that stuff. Go watch The Patriot with Mel Gibson. Catholic Mel Gibson. And think about this, America. We got a fight coming. We got to ready ourselves for it. Be holy and wait. Keep a weather eye. The right of rebellion depends on the Second Amendment and the First Amendment. The Second Amendment defends the First Amendment. We got to be ready. We got to be holy. God bless America.